Hi, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Rennie. For those of you who don't know me, hi. I have not been feeling motivated to record this week. I'm not gonna lie, so that's why I'm a little bit behind. Um, I guess I should just go ahead and jump in. I want to talk a little bit about like relapsing and just going through phases where you're really struggling with your mental health because that's kind of where I'm at right now. I've been having a really difficult past couple of weeks. Just I think I mentioned in some of the previous episodes, but like there's just been significant life changes for me this year, which again, like as someone who's like very spiritual, very into astrology and patterns and signs and all of those things, I already expected this of 2025. I kind of came into this year with the expectation that the transits and the energies of this year is going to be really challenging for most people. It's very much like giving 2020 on steroids, at least for me. And so I kind of knew, but I think it's always difficult actually going through things. Even if you can anticipate it, it's always harder like when you're in the thick of it. And right now I feel like I'm in the thick of it. I've been struggling a lot mentally and I wasn't honestly feeling motivated to record, but it's World Suicide Prevention Day today, so I wanted to talk a little bit about like relapsing and just what's going on for me. And I think I don't want to necessarily say advice, but just some of the things that I think I'm understanding that I need at this time that I feel like will help, me get through this time. But I just want to stop and caveat and just put a trigger warning because it is World Suicide Prevention Day. I want to be mindful of other people who might be triggered by conversations around suicide or suicidal ideation, because I'm gonna probably touch on that. I'm actually, yeah, definitely gonna touch on that. So if that's not something you feel like you can hear right now or you're comfortable hearing, then I understand, and I hope that you find the support that you need. But I'm gonna be talking about it because it is something I've been struggling with. It's something that as someone who is a survivor, multiple meanings when I say that, but I've survived certain types of abuses, but also multiple suicide attempts. So it's something that I struggle with, it's something that I struggle with. I think it's something a lot of people who have BPD or complex trauma or, more of the serious mental illnesses like I do are familiar with and struggle with on a regular basis. For me, it's been a hard season because it's been a while since I've struggled with this. So, this heavily. I feel like I've done a really good job of really, I don't want to say mastering my mind, but being a lot more objective about my thoughts than I was in the past, especially like earlier in my recovery, earlier in my healing journey. I think I've learned a lot about myself throughout this process. So now when I'm going through these seasons, I feel like it's kind of a test of how much I can actually integrate the things that I've learned. And right now I'm having a hard time because I think what's frustrating for me when I go through these cycles is I kind of have the mindset of I'm a perfectionist and I have the mindset of when I know better, I should be doing better. Like if I know something doesn't work for me or leads to particular outcomes that aren't necessarily healthy for me, I should do better. So I get really hard on myself when I find myself kind of slipping back into old patterns. And I have a hard time when I'm depressed, especially like having grace with myself when I am participating in behaviors that I know are rooted in trauma. And I've been doing a lot of that lately. I've been like really dabbling into things I haven't done in a while, and I've been like angry at myself because of it, because it's like I know better and I've been through it and I've learned things, and I'm just not someone who feels comfortable repeating patterns, and I can recognize when I'm doing it. I mentioned in like some of the previous episodes that I have journaled for a long time, since I was in fifth grade, since I was like 10 years old. So As someone who's journaled and has basically studied myself for a long time, I have like noticed a lot of my patterns at this point in my life. Like at this stage, I kind of know what all my patterns are, and um like I can see what path I'm headed down. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult in navigating relationships, especially someone with BPD, because it's like I know all these things, but like other people don't necessarily know it. So it might seem okay, it might seem like fine, but it's like I've kind of like I have the timeline of what happens and how things get progressively worse for me when I start doing certain behaviors. It's like I know the progression into like a super severe mental health season. I don't know if this makes sense, but I'm having a little bit of trouble articulating myself because I'm really not like well today. But yeah, I get irritated with myself because it's like in my mind once I start doing certain behaviors, it's like I can look back and say historically this has led to X, Y, and Z consequences. So why would I repeat it, right? But then I have to remind myself that when you're healing from trauma, especially complex trauma, there are gonna be things like this that regularly come up, and it's just a journey of continually learning how to not only like love yourself through it, which can be hard, and have grace with yourself do it through it, but like understanding why it's happening, like if there are particular triggers or things bringing it up, and like where more healing and more love, more support is needed. And I think I struggle sometimes. I always preach to have compassion with yourself. I always preach it, but I do understand how difficult it is when you're in the thick of, going through like some of the rough moments. And that's kind of where I'm at, where I'm having to bring myself back to reality and remind myself that this is just part of it. Like I have a hard time sometimes when I get like this, accepting that I am someone who does need a significant amount of healing. I am someone who has gone through a lot of significantly harmful things, and I need to be patient with myself because I get really frustrated, and I try not to compare myself to other people. I really do. I know we're all in our own individual journeys, but I do sometimes I fall into that trap occasionally, very rarely, but I do, and especially when I'm depressed. I kind of get in my head about, the expectations that I had set for myself, more so than, societal expectations or expectations that other people might have for me. I don't really care as much about that as I used to when I was younger, but I do still have high expectations for myself. And when I feel like I'm falling short of it, I'm very, very hard on myself. And lately, because I feel like I'm so self-aware, it hurts at this stage of my life. And I'm also very spiritually aware. So I feel like I'm even more frustrated with myself because I feel like I have so much more awareness than I did in the past. So I felt like it was easier for me to kind of not justify, but give myself a little bit more grace because, I didn't feel like I had the tools. I didn't feel like I had the understanding that I feel like I have now. And so now that I feel like I have all of the information, I'm so frustrated with myself when I'm not integrating the lessons or fully like allowing myself to um practice the things that I've been preaching basically and actually like prove to myself, not more so than other people, that I actually have learned these lessons, if that makes sense. And I feel like, life is like a school, so we're always going to be learning, we're always going to be growing, we're always going to make mistakes, but I still, even with that knowledge, have a really hard time being patient and graceful with myself right now. And because of that, it's definitely led to a lot of negative thought spirals, and that's making me more angry because I haven't dealt with that in a while. So to be dealing with it again is so frustrating because it's like, oh, how did I get here? But like I said, it's been a really difficult year for me, and I I know that instability is a major trigger for most people who have like BPD or depression or anxiety or complex trauma and so forth. I know that it's a huge trigger for most people, but I know it's even more challenging for those of us who have, who are neurodivergent or have very serious mental health conditions. So, I'm trying to remind myself and be grounded and, I'm a human after all. And so it's been a really hard year and I've had many very difficult years throughout my life. So there's a part of me that almost feels like I've been through worse than this. So why am I handling it so poorly? But um, I'm trying to remind myself that I'm changing and growing, and my level of sensitivity is always in flux. And there are going to be times where it's a lot harder for me to manage than other times, right? Regardless of the circumstances, which it can be really difficult for me, especially when I am aware and I read and I see what's happening in the world and I'm informed. So I know that there's so much suffering happening in the world and there's so much grief and a lot of people are struggling. A lot of people are struggling. It's not just me. Like I'm very much aware of that. And yet, um, I do beat myself up because I know that there are a lot of things for me to be grateful for. Even if I'm going through difficult things, I think I'm always someone who reminds myself there's always something for me to be grateful for. There's always something that I'm privileged about, but I think in this case, I can kind of let that mindset make me invalidate my own feelings and experiences, and I'm really trying not to do that. Um, and also just as someone who has intentionally made the decision to not perform or mask and just to be honest and authentic and show up in my truth. I want to be able to say when I'm going through seasons where I'm really not okay, I'm not feeling okay, and I'm not happy with my behaviors or decisions, and I'm not happy with particular environments or relationships and so forth. And yeah, that's kind of the season that I've been in. And because I've been so hard on myself, it's been making it even more challenging because I have been struggling with suicidal ideation and I haven't, again, dealt with that in a while. So it feels both heartbreaking and frustrating. And so basically, at this stage, I've kind of just had to acknowledge that in some ways I am trying to distract myself and escape from these feelings in ways that aren't always the healthiest. And kind of just acknowledge that it's happening. I think when I do kind of go through these seasons, I have a hard time sometimes accepting it, especially now. I feel like with everything that I've learned up until this point, I'm kind of frustrated. And it's like there's a part of me, the rational part of me understands and knows that like I will continue to go through seasons like this because life isn't easy, right? But I think I'm being extremely hard on myself this time because I feel like I'm not doing a good job of like integrating all of the skills and tools and lessons. And I'm trying to kind of process why, and I think one of the biggest things that I've realized is that I really am having a really difficult time releasing, older versions of myself. I think the way that I've kind of come to understand like my BPD and my illness is I developed a darker version of myself to protect me because I was hurt from such a young age throughout most of my life. Like there was just been back-to-back instances and relationships and circumstances that caused me tremendous pain and suffering and harm and in various ways. And so I feel like that darker, I there are many ways I refer to that part of myself. Like I usually say like my shadow side or my darker side. That part of me that, I feel like is ruled by ego and fear and pain and suffering and trauma. I realized, I was talking to a friend about this a while ago. I realized like earlier this year when I was going through a lot that I don't really want to let that part of me go because I feel like that part of me has helped me survive, and get through life. But I am seeing where, I'm seeing more clearly now that I'm at this stage in my healing and recovery, how much harm I've caused myself because of it. Even if I can acknowledge that, this part of me was born as kind of a survival mechanism, right? I can still also acknowledge that it's caused me a lot of harm. Like I've caused myself a lot of harm and it's sabotaged a lot of good things for me, and it's caused me to do things that I feel like are out of alignment with my true nature, my true self, not like the self that, the side of me that was born out of pain, but the side of me that's innate, which I feel like we're all, as woo-woo as it sounds, I feel like we're all innately love. I don't, we all come into the world innocent, loving babies, right? Like that is how we enter into this realm, as I like to call it. So, I don't think that goes away per se, but I do feel like life experiences, especially very traumatic, very painful life experiences, can definitely dim that. Or, in some severe cases, completely, I like to describe it as amnesia. It can completely make you forget that you have that light and that love within you. And so, for some people, especially those who are kind of really interested in psychology and all of this stuff. So those who are like in the dark triad, right? Like I'm a cluster B. I'm there. I'm talking about the DSM, and I know we have controversial takes on that. I do too. But like I understand like the frustration with labels and all of this, but when I'm just reading about these things, I can't help but think as someone who is more spiritual that like when we're talking about like cluster B illnesses, or the dark triad, like kind of the more severe mental illnesses, so like sociopaths, psychopaths, narcissists, and then, cluster B where I'm at, like where you have borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, all of those things, right? I feel like we get like people, humans as a whole get to that point because of pain, like tremendous pain and suffering. A lot of times people who've gone through so much trauma and pain to the point where it's like all they know or have experienced, it literally changes their brain. And I think that the more severe it is, I think it can really impact the ability to even experience empathy. And I don't know if any of what I'm saying is rooted in science. This is my personal opinion. But for me, I just feel like the more pain you experience, the more you kind of forget your true nature, which is love and light, which is, again, very woo-woo, but that's what I think. And so for me, healing is a big part of healing for me is remembering that at the core of my being, that's all that I am. It's just that these experiences in life have made me forget that. And when I'm going through seasons like this, it can be incredibly hard to remember that I didn't come into the world a broken, person who is suffering or whatever, right? And yes, I've done things I'm not proud of and I've caused harm just like people have harmed me. Um, but I am someone who believes that we can change. We can make a concerted effort to evolve, to grow. And I'm someone who feels like I'm dedicated to that. And so even though I'm frustrated with myself right now, one thing that I'm trying to do is at least have a more balanced mindset about what's happening, both for me personally and just also just in my relationships in my life, just have a more balanced mindset. Be honest, obviously, but like be a little bit more balanced. Because in the past, one thing that I think a lot of people with BPD in particular struggle with is splitting and which is black and white thinking. And so for me, I've been able to catch when I start to do that, when I start to catastrophize or I start to fixate on something to the point to where now I'm not viewing it in a neutral or objective way, which can be really hard to do. And especially right now, I feel like culturally speaking, like our society is, I don't want to say it's more polarized than ever because again, I'm someone who believes that it feels that way because we have access to way too much information, but it does feel that way. It does feel like incredibly polarized because we have so much access to one another's opinions and thoughts and for that reason, I think even the average person who isn't mentally ill struggles now with objective thinking. I think neutral thinking and nuance is like getting increasingly more rare, which scares me because again, like one of my biggest fears is groupthink. But it's really frustrating because like I'm someone who needs to practice being balanced in my thoughts in order to maintain emotional and mental stability. So it's been challenging because again, like culturally speaking, as a society, we're kind of struggling to be neutral, to be able to look at perspectives from a balanced place and not from a place where it's highly biased based on our own personal experiences. Like I want to always be able to take into account that my personal experiences are just that, mine, right? Like there's still other experiences and other perspectives that I can access, right? Because yeah, I mean, I'm hoping this makes sense, but I, so I've been trying really hard to like maintain some sense of balance in my perspective. That's the first thing. The second thing is I am noticing some of the patterns that are coming up, some of the behaviors that are coming up that are rooted in self-sabotage, self-harm, or just, those old ways of being that are connected to my traumas. And I'm having a hard time letting some of those patterns go. So I think where I'm at now is kind of like, let me process why. Like, why am I having such a hard time? What is it that I actually need? Because like I do think that when we have certain triggers or certain patterns that we don't want to break, or like not necessarily that we don't want to, but on a subconscious level, there's a part of us that's clinging on to it. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm victim blaming or whatever, but I do think that on a subconscious level, there are parts of us that cling to it, and it's not because we necessarily like it or want it, but there's some ounce of comfort or safety found there, even if it feels destructive. And that has been really hard for me, and it's taken a long time for me to accept that. Like no one wants to accept that. There are parts of them that they are ashamed of or they don't like that, you know, there's on a subconscious level a reason why they're not letting that part of them go or those behaviors go. And that's something I've kind of been sitting with. It's like, what do I actually need? And just been having a lot of trouble figuring it out, right? I do feel like in this stage of my life, I am very directionless. And I know that as someone who historically has kind of needed to be in control, and I've tried to find ways to be in control in various ways, whether that was through like my diet and eating or relationships or work. Like there have been various ways that I've tried to maintain a strong sense of control over my life. And so being in this season of life where I feel like I kind of don't necessarily have control, there are things I have control over, obviously, but like there are some things that are just out of my hands. And it's been really hard for me. It's been really hard for me to accept that. And so understanding that that's a trigger for me, I'm trying to give myself grace for some of the patterns that are coming up, knowing like what I'm experiencing right now and also seeing if like some of those patterns are connected to this sense of feeling lost or out of control. Like then what patterns show up in my life when I'm feeling this way. And I guess where I'm struggling is to find like the healthier alternatives that I actually want to do because again, like I think there's a part of me that some of these behaviors are, even if I know that they're not the healthiest, are still in my comfort zone and trying to find new behaviors is difficult, and I also feel like I do require motivation, and I feel very unmotivated to do it, to make the changes that I know I need to make. I feel very unmotivated because I'm so depressed. So it's hard. And, when I was still doing like traditional mental health treatment and taking DBT, which for those of you who don't know what that is, that's dialectical behavioral therapy, which really focuses on, as you could guess by the word behavioral, your behaviors, right? And just kind of using different tools. There's hella acronyms, using different tools to shift those behaviors. I've also taken CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy, which focuses on your thoughts. So, I've been trying to put these types of skills into action. Like, how can I focus on shifting my thoughts when I notice that I'm in a negative thought spiral? How can I focus on acknowledging that I'm slipping into behaviors that aren't healthy and shift those behaviors, right? How can I acknowledge the feelings that are coming up that might be contributing to these things? How can I acknowledge what might be triggering me at this time? And then how can I go deeper and figure out, like, on a subconscious level, what do I need? But I think that, like, processing and trying to figure all of this out is irritating because I'm just tired and I have processed and overanalyzed for so long, and I've been intentionally doing this healing work for so long that I just feel tired, right? There are phases in this process when I think if you've been doing this type of healing work for so long, where you're just burnt out, right? And I do feel like I have been getting a lot of intuitive nudges to just allow myself to play more. But I think that one thing I'm noticing is when I'm trying to have fun and take it easy and just allow myself to live my life and not be so hyper fixated on what I need to fix or whatever, there is still, when I'm struggling mentally, there are still parts of me that kind of go back to some of those destructive behaviors. And I kind of used the excuse that I'm just allowing myself to live life and have fun. And it's like, no, I still have to take care of myself, right? It should not be fun to do things that are harmful to myself or that I know aren't healthy or that I know ultimately lead to things that are harmful or unhealthy. And that's something that I've been struggling with. And I think I struggle with in a lot of my relapses or like when I'm really in those seasons that I'm severely depressed and it's hard. I will say, I will give myself credit and say I'm doing a lot better because historically I have not communicated honestly about where I was at, very much isolated from the world. There would be times where I think I didn't go out for weeks and months on end, unless I absolutely had to. So now I do notice that I am naturally implementing more of the things that I know actually help me. Like if I'm feeling ungrounded, maybe I have a day or two where I'm not necessarily on top of, doing things that I know are healthy and help me, and I allow myself to fall into those old patterns and old behaviors. But then eventually I will do something to switch up the energy. Like eventually I will go get sunlight if I know I've been like inside for too long. I will talk to a friend if I know I've been isolating. I'll be honest about how I'm feeling if I feel like I need support. And I'm still coming to terms with the fact that, I do lack a lot of support. Like it's not like I can really talk to my family about these things, and I don't have a lot of friends. And so, with that in mind, I feel like I do try to make concerted efforts to go out and make friends. It's still really hard, very hard for me to do. But I acknowledge the small wins. I acknowledge, like, when I go out and actually talk to someone, like today, I went out and talked to, like, what, one or two random people. Mind you, they were vendors, but still, like, it's better than allowing myself to stay in the patterns and behaviors of like isolation and, cutting myself off from the world because I feel unstable, right? It helps ground me a little bit. So that's kind of like what I'm trying to do right now. And I'm also just reminding myself to take baby steps, take it easy and, not put this pressure on myself to kind of figure it out and fix it overnight because I do feel like that's kind of what I've been doing lately. It's kind of feeling like I have a deadline on when I can figure things out. Like I'm like, okay, things aren't the best for me right now. I'm in a really strange phase of life and it's been challenging. And I give myself until Friday to get my shit together. Like that's kind of like how I work. I think my Virgo moon, like I'm very type A sometimes. So I feel like, I'll have like a couple days where I'm just like, whatever. I'm just gonna let myself spiral and crash out for a bit. But then after, I'm just like, all right, I gotta get it together. I'll give myself 3 days. And so I'm trying to really work on like, being patient with myself. I'm not a patient person in general, and it's something that I really need to work on. I'm not patient at all. I don't like to wait for anything or anyone, which is a problem when you're healing from severe trauma. Sorry, y'all. I'm like, if you're watching a video, I'm literally trying to adjust myself on this pillow. Um, but this is a problem when you're healing from severe trauma because you have to be patient with yourself. Like it's going to take time. And especially if you have like a extensive history, it's not like you're not to not to diminish those who feel like they've only had one or two major experiences, but if you feel like you're healing from a multitude of traumas, then it's even harder. So I've been trying to give myself grace. I'm having a little bit of a difficult time doing so right now, but I am aware of what it is that I need to do, both internally and externally, to kind of at least find myself in a more balanced state. Not, I think what I try to do, what I try to remind myself when I get into, these mindsets, when I go into relapses, is that I'm not gonna just feel happy and fulfilled overnight. It's gonna take some time. Again, not patient, so that doesn't always feel great to know, and it's hard for me to accept. But once I do, I can kind of try to take baby steps. Like if today I just was able to do this, then I'm proud of myself. Or, if I can at least get back into balance, if I can at least do the things that I know I need to do to take care of myself, even if it's just the basic things then I'm okay with that for now, right? Like eventually I'll get back to a place where I feel okay, and eventually I'll get back to a place where I can feel joy. But, I have to be a little bit more realistic and a little bit more patient in the process, because sometimes I'm just like, I'll give myself 3 to 5 business days to get my shit together, and then I'll be good as new and I'll be happy again. And it's like, no, right? Like I've been very depressed for a very long time, and so it once you're depressed for an extremely long time, it becomes like a baseline, right? Like it's like this is like your natural state of being now, and it shouldn't be that way. It's not normal in my opinion for it to be that way, but it becomes like a baseline. And so it can be really hard to not return to that baseline, especially when like external circumstances like relationships or career or just for me, every aspect of my life is in flux, like hello, eclipse season, and I'm all mutable. So, like every aspect of my life from like June till now has shifted. Every aspect. And so, of course, I'm gonna be off balance. Of course, I'm gonna like have these moments, right? Because that instability is a trigger for me. So I have to be patient because it's not gonna just magically resolve itself overnight. It's going to take some time and it's going to take some effort and it's going to take me having grace with myself. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. But yeah, I think what's really important for me is even if I didn't feel motivated to do this, to record this, I want to show up authentically because it's frustrating to me that in 2025, even after COVID and everything that's been happening in the world, that we still haven't fully normalized being honest when we're struggling. And I do think a lot of people are struggling. It's been really hard for people. It's not easy out here. And I do think a lot of people hide that and feel uncomfortable sharing that. And I know that I do. Like in real life, I definitely feel reluctant and very private. I'm mostly distrustful of most people. I do usually think most people have ulterior motives or aren't sincere. I don't really feel like people genuinely care. I think a lot of people pretend to. And I know that this is a mindset that needs to shift because I have met some good people who do have sincere hearts and do care, but I feel like most people are just nosy and they actually genuinely do not care. Um, and so it can be hard for me in real life to actually open up and share. And so this is a space that is special to me And even though I feel like absolute shit right now, and I feel very lost in this season of my life and very depressed, and I have definitely been struggling with suicidal ideation. I don't have any plans, of course. But I have been struggling a lot. I have been struggling a lot. And I have been feeling lonely, and I have been feeling a lack of support. But at the same time, I have been acknowledging where I've grown and changed a lot, where I am lucky and grateful, where I do have loving people, even if it's not like a ton, you know? So, I'm trying to maintain that sense of balance, but it's not easy. It's not easy. And I just think it's important for me to share because, again, we perform a lot. And I feel like at this stage, it should be normalized, and we should understand that, given what's happening in the world and what's been happening over the past couple of years, especially, it's normal that people aren't feeling their best. That it's normal if people have moments like this or have seasons like this or go into periods like this because it's been a real challenge. And, you know, not everyone has support. That's something that people don't understand. Like for me, this is a safe space because I don't have family. I have never been able to call a parent or a grandparent ever in my entire life and just talk about the things that are like I'm struggling with or bothering me. I've never had that in my entire life. So I am someone who believes you have to kind of create family, you have to kind of create community and create the support you need. And that can be really hard when you're depressed and unmotivated. You feel like you just don't have the time or energy when you're focused on survival. That can be damn near impossible. So I feel like, I should at least take advantage of the benefits of the internet and share so that whichever, you know, fortunate or unfortunate souls come across this at least know that they're not the only one, right? Like this can be very isolating, and I talk about it a lot. Depression can feel very, very lonely. Like you're the only one who's experiencing it. Like you're the only one that's drowning. You're right, and like everyone around you has life vest or whatever. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a way to describe it, but yeah, that's how it feels to me anyway. And I have to remind myself, like, I am not the only one. And the more I talk to people, honestly, the more I'm realizing, like, we're all going through things. We're all struggling to some degree, some more than others, of course. But um, there are usually going to be times in life when you're really going through it. And so I share honestly and openly, even when I'm not feeling my best and I'm not motivated, because I want to remind people that it's okay. It's okay if you're not okay right now, especially right now, right? There's so much going on in the world. So I know it's hard, but try not to beat yourself up. I know I'm struggling right now a lot with that. So it's kind of like I'm telling myself this as much as I'm sharing it with whoever comes across this. But I'm just gonna end it there. I'll leave you all with that. Try not to beat yourselves up. It's honestly, I feel like the more we kind of just are honest with one another with how we're really actually doing and stop pretending and just be real and acknowledge that it's very difficult right now. It's not impossible to get through it, but it's going to be hard. It's going to take time and try our absolute best to not beat ourselves up through it, which can make it so much worse, right? It's not going to help things get better to beat ourselves up about it. I think that's the best thing we can do, right? And just celebrate like the small wins, like getting out of bed when you really, really, really didn't want to and really thought you wouldn't be able to, or eating a meal when you have no appetite. Like just celebrate those small things you do for yourself. Because it's not easy. It's not easy to be fighting with your own mind all the time. It's exhausting. I'm feeling like really drained and really tired. Which I think probably shows. But I'm gonna go. I'm gonna leave it there. I am sending my love to anyone and everyone who's struggling right now, and I hope and pray we get through it. It's been a year, but yeah, I appreciate you if you stayed and listened up until now. And again, I do struggle when I'm depressed, especially to stay consistent and motivated to record. I genuinely don't feel like doing anything when I get like this. And so I'm really pushing myself right now to practice opposite action and do the things that I know I need to do or want to do, even if I'm not feeling motivated right now. It's hard. So bear with me, but I appreciate y'all so much and feel free to follow me if you feel called to. I'm trying to be more active. It's hard, but I am at Just Riri Shop on TikTok and Instagram. And yeah, I think that's all for me. I'm sending love to all of y'all out there, especially those of you struggling. And until next time, bye.